Hello guys, welcome to Manhwa Ghost. Today I am going to show you a unique manhwa story. So, let's get started. Our protagonist runs through the forest, saying he can't believe he's going to be late on such an important day. A group of people sees him from a distance and says that he has finally arrived. The knight says it's ridiculous for the new to arrive so late. However, the girl next to him tells him that he also used to be late. Our protagonist apologizes for being so late. His name is Junseo Shin and he has the creator class specializing in weapons. With that, they stand up and the knight says he was just joking. However, the protagonist already realizes he made a mistake. It's been 3 months since he joined this guild and now he has his first chance to enter a dungeon. He has to stay alert, especially since he's entering as support and he wants to show everyone that he is also useful. Inside, a rank B hunter named Doyan Mun asks if this is his first time. Embarrassed, he says yes and then leaves. The only dungeons he has entered were just to collect items. The guy explains that as support, the most important thing is to position himself intelligently. If he distances himself too much, you can end up alone and be killed without the team helping, and he warns that since he is a creator, he needs to be alert to send a dagger whenever he receives a signal. The guy asks if it's easy and he says yes. However, he mentions that he can also create other weapons. The guy explains that it won't be necessary and that he doesn't need to try too hard this first time. At this point, the mage named Hayo newly senses that creatures are ahead. The captain tells them to form up and with that, they advance. The mage tells the chief that there are 2 small concentrations of mana and 1 very large one approaching. Doyan finds it strange that the chief is heading in their direction. He says he will handle it and asks the protagonist how quickly he can make a dagger that responds in about 20 seconds. The guy says that's perfect and tells him to start making the first one. They will finish this in a maximum of 40 seconds and the crystal creatures are already starting to advance. The team is excited and the knight says he will go ahead. He activates an ability, steps on the ground and strikes the shield, lifting the monsters. With this the girl advances, punches the first one in the face and dodges the second. However, strangely, a creature is passed by her. She warns the mage to be careful and the knight steps in front of him to prepare. With that, he finishes conjuring the spell and sends a barrage of fire, exploding the creatures. They get excited and a protagonist is impressed with the good teamwork. He then announces that the weapon is ready and fabricates an F-rank knife. He grips the handle and throws it towards Doyan, telling him to catch it, which he does mid-air. Using a magic that bathes it in shadows, the weapon dissolves. With this, he jumps towards the chief and cuts in a single strike. The head falls to the ground and the weapon is destroyed. The group gathers with everyone in good condition and a protagonist is impressed that this guild he joined is much stronger than he expected. Everyone was individually strong and also had great teamwork. On the other hand, he couldn't do anything besides create a simple dagger. He questions whether he really deserved to be there. Doyan appears, asking if he is okay and our boy responds that he is, but apologizes for not helping much. The chief looks confused and says he has no idea how much money they save because of him. The ability he has is strong, but it dissolves any weapon, making it very expensive. That's why he needs the help of a creator like the protagonist and says that for the first dungeon he did very well. Our boy thanks him, saying he will do his best. The knight says it's now time for them to fight and return when the place shakes. Everyone wonders what's happening since the chief is already dead. Junseo points out to them, telling them to look and warning that the wall is crumbling. The mage activates a light spell and says it looks like a path has opened. At this, Dwayne wonders if they discovered a secret passage. The knight gets excited, saying that there is usually a lot of good stuff in this type of place. With this, the fighter says she is very eager, because they will profit a lot. Doyan asks the mage if he detected anything, who says no. He says that if that's the case, they can at least take a look to see what's there. Hesitantly, the mage agrees and the guy calls Junseo. They begin walking into the cave and in the next scene, Junseo is running from a creature, wondering how this happened. Everyone was already dead and he was the only one left. It made no sense for a creature like that to be in a D-rank dungeon. Not to mention that no one had ever heard of a monster that couldn't be detected by magic. He looks back and the creature is right beside him. It hits him with a punch that sends him flying. He hits his head and blood comes out. Trembling, he starts to get up, telling himself that he can't die there, but the chief keeps advancing. He starts making a dagger, saying he won't give up in this place. He completes it, grabs it and throws it at the chief. However, the chief easily deflects it with his arm and nothing happens. With this they are face to face and he gets punched again. The impact breaks the ground and throws him underwater. As he sees himself sinking, he tells himself that he knew this would happen. He is a useless D-rank support who can't do anything but summon simple weapons, and it's so pathetic that he ran and abandoned his friends. They shouldn't have brought trash like him and should never have awakened. But that's when the legendary message appears. He had discovered the source of something hidden and completed the requirements to become a player. There was a flash of blue light and he was welcomed as a player by one Junseo Shin. He was still drowning when the message asked if he wanted to accept the new reward. He had no idea what all of this was, but he was drowning and had no choice. So, he clicked yes. In the next scene, he was walking on steps made of swords. He saw himself face to face with the chief and had received the experiences of the past life of the adventurer Junseo Shin, the weapon creator. The chief saw him with an aura and went to punch him. But at that moment, he received the reward. His eyes glowed and swords were thrown, piercing the chief. The monster was thrown to the ground, but the protagonist felt a strange headache. He didn't know what was happening and strange memories were entering his head. When he looked ahead, the chief was already coming to punch him again. However, the impact hit directly into his spiked shield. He realized he hadn't taken any damage, even though the creature was so strong. With this, he was thrown back, thinking that if the information was correct, the chief has a weakness he knows. Golems in general do not have a specific weak point and can easily recover from any damage. And that's why the easiest way to deal with them is by attacking from all sides and all angles. He activates the world grid ability, surrounding the creature with projections. Within that region, he can manipulate the items as he wished. With that, he clenches his fist and the swords advance toward the chief, exploding the area. After some time, when the smoke clears, the golem is shattered on the ground. He approaches, exhausted, thinking it's unbelievable to use a creation ability in an offensive way. The system says he killed a certain chief from a certain place. Then the protagonist sees a purple aura and wonders what it is. The system activates the ability to absorb demonic energy and an orb appears in his hand. He pauses for a second to try to recover from everything that has been happening. It seems he gained memories of a past life of his own, but he has no idea what that means. What he discovered is that this other self of his is living many generations ahead. And in those times, the world had already been completely destroyed. He received memories of massacres impossible to describe, but he also gained all the knowledge and experience of that moment. But nothing indicates that that future is certain, especially since many things have already changed. One of them being this status window in front of him, something that didn't exist in the memory. Enyan says that it seems he has become a so-called player. According to what he learned, players weren't supposed to exist at this point in time. Only in about 2 years were the first supposed to appear. You become a player when you start seeing the hallucination known as the system. This completely changed the world as each player received different rewards from their system. And that's what allowed people to go beyond the power of the awakened. It was this way that the guild he was in had become one of the strongest since the chief became a player. The protagonist, on the other hand, didn't change much but continued to do his best to help his guild. In his past life, he always thought it would be very convenient to have this, but it's better than he imagined. And one of the biggest differences is that he received a passive ability to absorb demonic energy. He sees that he will have to absorb it to receive a new reward and imagines he knows where to get it. However, now is not the time for that. Looking at the bodies of his teammates, he knows that the first mission is to get them out of there. Meanwhile, at the Hunter Association, a girl looks through the blinds and asks if they are really going to let him go. She says it's strange that 5 people died in the incident and the only survivor is a D-rank support, and the most suspicious thing is that he managed to recover everyone's bodies and didn't just run away. The girl asks the chief for an answer, who then asks that she's suggesting that the D-rank guy killed everyone. He hits her on the head with a folder, warning her that this is not an ordinary civil case. After all, it's extremely difficult to know exactly what happens in a dungeon. He then leaves saying that many people disappear like this because small guilds don't win the auctions for gates. So, they enter illegally and end up not notifying anyone the members die. Girl says she understands and wishes him a great day. Walking down the corridors, the guy is thinking about the protagonist. Everything he said seems true, but he has a strange feeling about it. First, he was too calm during the investigation. He had no experience in dungeons, so why wasn't he panicking? His account was missing some details, but it seemed completely logical. The worst part is that he's not happy about it, but he can't get involved. However, it would be wise to keep an eye on him. Walking through the city, the protagonist says that something is wrong. The gate was listed as unconfirmed, but they clearly had proof of purchase. Even the association's seal was marked on it. One option was that someone pretended to be from the association to deceive the one guild. Not to mention that other guilds have been experiencing similar situations. He doesn't know the reason, but there is something in common between all these disappearances. All the guilds had players like Doyen who would become heroes in the future. Clearly, someone is trying to erase the existence of the heroes. This means that for now, he must ensure that no one knows he has abilities. It's already the sole survivor of something that will remain a mystery, and if he does anything, it will be suspicious. The first selection for players will be in 2 years, so he has plenty of time to prepare. He will have to use the memories he has as much as possible to become as strong as possible. At the same time, he needs to gain all this power without attracting much attention. He looks through the skills, searching for something that would help in this case. And he smiles, saying this will do. Fast forward a year later. In a forest, a blonde guy strikes the shield of a werewolf. However, he was using a Walmart sword because it's impossible. The sword broke in the middle of the shield. The monster throws him away, but he manages to stab the knife into the ground. As soon as he looks up, the creature is already coming. The creature hits the ground and he desperately jumps to the side. The whole group seems scared, while the chief keeps approaching. That is AD difficulty no lord. The blonde points ahead, saying there shouldn't be a no lord in an E rank dungeon. This type of monster should only be in AD rank place. However, the chief doesn't care and jumps towards him. The knight throws himself in front and blocks the attack. However, from a distance, he warns that he won't be able to hold on much longer and they have to find a way to hurt this monster. The problem is that this creature is one of the biggest nightmares for new players because it's immune to magic. And in beginner groups, it's common for them to rely heavily on magical power. This situation often results in everyone's death. The blonde knows he's the only physical damage dealer in the group, but he hasn't been able to do anything. The guy holding the shield doesn't have a weapon to defend himself. The blonde scratches his head, thinking if he had known it would be like this, he wouldn't have come with his group. But then he hears a strange clicking sound next to him. When he looks, there's a guy mining in that dungeon. That's the helper. The person there just to collect crystals and items. The blonde thinks the guy is some kind of lunatic to be so calm while everyone's about to die. But then something catches his attention. The guy's pickaxe dissolves in his hand. Now knowing that the guy is a creator, he has a chance to get a new weapon, even if he is low level. He calls out to the guy and the protagonist turns around. With that, the blonde runs over to him and asks if he's a creator and if he could make a sword. The protagonist says theoretically he can. The blonde then shows the rest of the sword and asks him to make something similar to it that is as durable as possible. Junseo apologizes, saying he came in as a helper and not as a support. The blonde yells at him, saying it's not the time to focus on details, since everyone's about to die, and warns him that he will die too if they don't manage to kill that boss. Junseo says that's fine, but he has a condition. He'd forget all of his skills as soon as they finish the dungeon and would also share the items as if he were a support. The blonde says he's asking too much since a weapon alone doesn't win a dungeon. The protagonist smiles, saying it's interesting that he says that because weapons are essential in dungeons and guarantees that with this weapon in hand, he can't be defeated in that place. The scene shifts to the Overkill Guild, one of the top 3 in Korea. The chief tells the girl to come in and she says the association is asking for his cooperation. He asks if it's about another misclassified dungeon and she says yes. He says that's fine, but they'll have to pay a lot since few awakened enter gates that have already been closed. That's when, in looking at the photo, he seems to remember the protagonist. When another dungeon had been misclassified and he went to check it out, he also saw that guy there. He remembers that in the incident, he said he was a helper. When a dungeon is misclassified, the chance of survival is minimal, and strangely, in 2 cases when this happened, this guy seemed to be involved. Tae-hun already knows this is no coincidence. The secretary says that last week a B-ranked dungeon was classified as D and the entire group was wiped out. Tae-hun says the association must be having a huge headache. He remembers the old man from that place and knows that guy's life isn't easy. He says it's fine, they'll make money because of the intervention ability they have. Then he asks about what he had requested. She says she bought a B-rank weapon from a blacksmith, but he should test it first. Tae-hun explains that every weapon gets destroyed when he uses his ability, and the problem is that there aren't many good creators. So, he tells her to keep looking because he can't keep breaking precious items like that. With that, a short-haired guy enters the room, saying they have a problem. It seems some of their recruits entered the dungeon that the association asked for help with. Not only that, it's a C rank and a difficult one. Tae-hun immediately says if it's an emergency, he'll take care of it. A bunch of reporters and adventurers are in front of the Red Gate, until someone announces that the Overkill Guild is arriving. The reporters turn and start asking if they're there to intervene. They approach a girl with glasses and ask about the situation. She talks about the members who entered and that it was reclassified as C rank. He asks how long they've been there and she says 2 hours. He then says he doesn't know how many he'll find alive, but he'll do his best. He and the secretary approach the gate. She reaches into her bag and pulls out a katana. Her name is Huiju Min and she can create spaces on the other side of cover or barriers. With that, Tae-hun takes the sword and sets it on fire. One slash at the portal and the intervention skill is activated. The only problem is that only the person who used the ability can enter the place. That's why she activates his sword before passing it to him. He takes a new sword and she wishes him good luck. Tae-hun then finds himself inside the dungeon with a bunch of defeated monsters. Seeing the corpses and the humidity, he knows it's a reptilian dungeon. Not seeing any excrement on the ground, he knows the monsters in this place have some intelligence. It's probably a colony of lizard men with some knowledge. Considering the number he saw defeated, he already imagines the people must be dead. He advances to the room, ready to see the worst scenario. However, when he arrives at the area where the lost group should be, he sees something completely unexpected. A lizard man jumps toward the guy, who easily defends himself. The archer shoots an arrow into the creature's ribs and the guy has no idea how that group is dominating the lizard man. After observing for a few seconds, he realizes that the lizard men are faster and stronger. So, what are they doing differently? At that moment, one of the lizard men strikes the blonde's sword, leaving him defenseless. A monster comes to finish him off from above and Tae-hun says he arrived just in time. An explosion happens and when the smoke clears, a sword has blocked the monster's attack. Tae-hun wonders who used that ability. Then he sees the protagonist standing there with his hand glowing blue. At this point, he notices he's being watched and they lock eyes. Someone starts counting the number of members. He realizes there are 8, 9 and next to him there are 10. He says it's strange because he only remembers having 9 people and Tae-hun asks what he thinks he's doing. At that moment, a guy is struck and thrown to the ground. The lizard man goes to finish him off and Tae-hun leaps into action. The protagonist knows very well who this guy is and notices he even brought a spare weapon. Fire begins to emanate from Tae-hun's sword and a burst of flames pushes the adventurer. Tae-hun tells them to stand back and they thank him. With that, he is left alone against the lizard men and once again conjures the flame magic, slicing the creature in half. The creature collapses to the ground. At this point, Tae-hun notices that even though he only used one spell, the weapon is about to break. Then he hears a step and a creature is advancing toward him. The monster attacks the ground and Tae-hun retreats. The protagonist asks if this always happens when he uses an ability. Apparently, he wastes a lot of weapons. Tae-hun questions if he's looking for a fight. Suddenly, Junseo creates a katana and tells him to use it. Tae-hun is confused. It's not normal for someone to construct such a complex weapon with a simple hand movement. Only an extremely experienced creator can do that. So, the question remains, why is he here? Suddenly, Junseo says he has one condition for him to use it. Once the dungeon is complete and he leaves, he should forget everything about his abilities. Tae-hun says there's no way he can force himself to forget, even if he wants to. Junseo then says he can go to his bag and break another weapon he brought. Tae-hun sighs, realizing he has no other option. He promises he will forget everything when it's over. Now our boy smiles and says he can go have fun. The leader charges at that moment. One of the lizard men comes towards him and he activates the flame ability on his sword again. However, with a direct cut against the creature, the monster's weapon shatters. He finds it strange because all he tried to do was block the attack. This would only be possible if the weapon itself were extremely powerful. He already knows that somehow the boy made something above B rank with a simple movement. Once again, another lizard man is about to strike, but now Tae-hun gets excited. He wants to use all this power and see how good this weapon is. He faces one of the lizard men and activates an explosion of flames. At the same time, he goes to its back and stabs it in the neck. The monster falls dead and he notices the blade is still intact. Meanwhile, the people in the dungeon are thanking him for saving everyone's lives. The leader says it's great to see no one got hurt. They explain that they were struggling until a boy there started making some weapons. He just observes, approaches our boy and asks his name. Junseo questions why he wants to know since he's just a helper. Tae-hun says his own name and says it's better to communicate that way. With that, Junseo looks back and introduces himself. He tells the guy in the group that he placed all the mana crystals at the entrance. Then Tae-hun asks him to wait and asks why they don't go together to the boss room. Our boy says he's there just as a helper. The leader agrees but warns that no one will be able to leave until the boss is defeated. The protagonist says he can handle it, but the leader says the weapons are already breaking. However, Junseo says he already made him a sword that won't break. Tae-hun responds that this is a misclassified dungeon, so you never know what might happen. Even in the boss room, there could be something completely different, so he needs to be cautious. The protagonist sighs, saying he understands and goes along. They arrive in a huge room and on a throne, the Lizard King is sitting with a creature. With that, the guy comments that he will finish it as quickly as possible, because this sword will break if he keeps stalling. Our boy is already getting angry at him for doubting his weapon and says if he really doesn't believe it, he can test it as much as he wants. With that, the Lizard King points the blade and the creature lunges at them both. They both dodge and Tae-hun goes after the beast. However, the creature strikes in midair and he can't get close. Once again, he defends himself and creates a circle of fire, preparing to advance again. But this time, the Lizard King approaches and collides with him midair. Once again, he is sent to the ground and the boss activates a flame ability on his lizard. Suddenly, a shield appears in front of Tae-hun. Obviously, it was our boy's doing and he takes the hit from the lizard still being thrown. The boy doesn't get tired of taking hits. He even teases the protagonist saying he thought he was a weapon creator. Our boy asks if he's ever been hit in the head with a shield to see how much it hurts. The guy laughs but warns that when they get out of there, he will have a lot of questions. He flies for the boss again, who this time sends an attack with a chain. He defends himself with the blade, but the boss's chain wraps around his sword. With that, Tae-hun is thrown towards the lizard men. The protagonist stretches out his hand and tells him to take this seriously. He dissolves the guy's sword and reconstitutes a new one. This way, he is no longer trapped by the chains and easily slashes the monster's mouth. The Lizard King has no idea what happened and at the same time, Tae-hun throws his sword like a spear. The boss dodges, but now Tae-hun approaches and kicks him in the stomach. The poor guy falls to the ground, but Tae-hun doesn't stop. He activates the flame ability and flies towards the boss. When the smoke clears, the poor guy is burned and missing an arm. He looks to the side and sees the protagonist grab his spear and run towards him. As he tries to strike, it seems to get some kind of shield. Our boy just warns him that it's not good to point a weapon at him. While Tae-hun approaches from behind, the boss realizes he's screwed. At that moment, outside, the gate turns blue. The people know they cleared it and everyone leaves the dungeon. Everyone rushes to Tae-hun, asking for details about the dungeon. The Overkill Guild members ask if he's hurt and he says he's fine. The people inside thank him, saying that if it weren't for him, they would have died. Meanwhile, the protagonist says he already took his share and is leaving. He observes the people and leaves without anyone noticing. Reporters come to ask Tae-hun how he managed to clear the dungeon so quickly. He turns to say that, actually, all the glory goes to, but he sees nothing and seems at a loss for words. The people comment that if it weren't for the master's arrival, they would have died since the weapons were already broken. He runs to the guy and asks what he's talking about. Doesn't he remember the guy who was creating weapons for everyone? The guy looks confused, asking about the weapon creator. He looks at the girl next to him and asks if she saw the guy who was helping to create weapons and she says no. Tae-hun turns to the others and asks if they saw the guy creating weapons and they also say no. The only thing the boy had done was gather a bunch of bags with mana crystals. Tae-hun has no idea what happened because he remembers everything very clearly. One of the memories that comes to mind is the protagonist saying that he should forget everything about his abilities. With this, he imagines that the protagonist must have used a creator ability that can impose restrictions. The problem is that this is something for high-level people, so how is he able to do it? At this moment, the other Overkill members ask if he's having a problem. He throws the bag into the guy's lap and runs off. They're confused as Tae-hun looks around, wondering where that boy is. What he doesn't know is that he's hiding right behind the little wall there. The guild members approach and ask what's going on. He tells Wizu that he needs her to find someone immediately. Now it's our boy who can't be found. A while later, she informs him that she's located him. It seems he entered a D-rank dungeon with 4 other people at 1 p.m. He's happy the boy isn't too far away and she questions why he seems so interested in a D-rank creator. Tae-hun becomes thoughtful. Of course, anyone looking at the boy's record would think he's really D-rank. But the existence of the ability to create contracts and rentals proves something very different. The A-rank rental ability forces someone to fulfill a predetermined condition to receive an item. This is an ability that many creators use to make a lot of money, but apparently the boy was using it to hide his identity. What's even stranger is that with the creator ability the boy has, he would be at least on the same level as Tae-hun. The only thing he can do now is ask in person. Clenching his fist, he says he's never felt such a sensation when holding his sword. In fact, he's more impressed with being able to use all his power without worrying about the weapon being destroyed. He's met many extremely skilled blacksmiths, but as soon as he activated his ability and struck any creature, the sword shattered. The blacksmith was devastated by this guy destroying their masterpieces. No one could meet his expectations, and the problem is that creators can only produce standardized weapons. However, that guy's sword had a design and performance beyond expectations. With Junseo's weapons, he might be able to use an ability that no weapon has withstood so far. He knows it would take at least 5 hours to clear a D-rank gate. He stands up and the girl says he has a meeting with the master of the Hayama Guild, but he tells her to cancel it because they can't lose the boy. Meanwhile, at the gate, Anirecap takes a slash to the stomach. The knight is shocked, wondering how it's possible that the helper created this sword. He managed to kill the boss without even using much mana. Our boy, as always, is calmly in the corner. However, the guy is all excited, saying he's never had such an incredible sword. He turns to the protagonist and thanks him. With that, everyone is already saying it would be great to invite him to the guild. It would be the biggest waste to leave this boy just as a helper. Observing them, the protagonist thinks he used more mana than he expected. He wouldn't have to worry so much if he still had the mana, he felt that day. When he faced the golem, he felt an immense kind of energy. However, since then, he has never been able to reproduce that same sensation. Now he has access to a small amount of mana similar to what he had before. At least it's enough to create some weapons and some pickaxes. From the memories, he learned that creation is a primary ability. It has a simple principle that the more mana you put in, the better the item is. However, there is a way to increase a weapon's power without needing more mana. This is with enough knowledge to know exactly how it is forged. The better your knowledge, the better the quality and the less mana required. As soon as he discovered that this was a concept of his ability, he started practicing every day with a blacksmith to quickly learn what was necessary. He has no idea how strong a weapon he created with all his mana would be. However, even his pickaxes were much stronger. He has to keep using the rental ability all the time, so he needs to accumulate as many crystals as possible. Not to mention that the mana items he would need to buy are extremely expensive. The only thing he can afford to buy are mana potions that are distributed to everyone. At least he has to be thankful that people still invite him to missions despite being D rank, and the passive ability to absorb demonic energy is making progress. All he needs now is just a little more demonic energy. The problem is that he needs 20% more and gains about 1% per dungeon. And the only way to speed up this process is by entering misclassified dungeons. That's because he can always get much more demonic energy there. The problem is that no one knows the true difficulty until they enter, and in the last one, he would have had trouble if the guy hadn't shown up. But unfortunately, this is the only way to evolve and keep his identity secret. After that, everyone leaves the dungeon and goes home. The protagonist realizes the memory was wiped, so everything went well. Until someone calls his name. As soon as he turns around, Tae-hun is coming with his secretary. At that moment, the boy knows it didn't work on that bastard. The guy asks if he remembers and he says he might not. Tae-hun tells him to stop joking and hands him a card. Our boy looks confused and the guy says he wants to discuss something with him. Oh, it's a card from the Overkill Guild and he wants to chat with our boy. The boy knows that it is one of the 3 largest guilds in all of Korea. The problem is that he can't get involved with someone that big, so he will have to make an excuse. He turns around, saying he doesn't have time because he has a dinner reservation. However, Tae-hun places his hand on his shoulder. He says he doesn't need to worry because they'll pay for the dinner and it'll be quick, and Tae-hun has a very well thought out plan. He invited the boy to dinner to get him on board. Junseo decides to accept just to see how well the ability to make him forget worked. He agrees, thanking him. At the restaurant, he asks what the master of the Great Overkill Guild wants to discuss with a D rank support. Without wasting time, Tae-hun says his class is Berserker and he has a lot of power, but no weapon can withstand his attacks. That's why the biggest difficulty of this class is finding something they can use. That's why he went to the best blacksmiths and spent a lot of money hoping to find something that worked. However, none of the weapons he tested so far could handle his power, except for the sword our boy created. Junseo realizes that his ability didn't erase any memory. Which means he missed some detail. The Gaiden calls out to him, saying he'll get straight to the point, and asks if he wants to join the guild. He knows the boy isn't in any guild, so he's willing to pay an exorbitant price. He'll receive $10 million, a 10% annual increase, and the right to take items from missions. Our boy apologizes and says he's not interested in joining any guild, so he'll decline the offer. He smiles, thanking him for the meal, and leaves. At that moment, the secretary asks why he made such a crazy offer. I want to stop making jokes about it, but Tae-hun tells the secretary that she wasn't there to see how good he was. It's been a long time since he touched a thick sword and it didn't scream. He felt as if that sword could withstand all his power and remain intact. The secretary was about to say something else, and he adds that another reason is he's tired of breaking high-rank weapons. She recalls that one of the guild's biggest problems is that the boss keeps breaking all the weapons and can't use his full power. She finally understands if he could really create something like that, it would be almost a bargain for them. However, she reminds him that no one has ever created something like that, not even the best in the industry. She asks if he's sure and he says yes. He's willing to offer whatever the boy wants as long as he works for them. Outside, our boy thinks it was a shame to refuse such a good offer. Having the help of a guild like Overkill would be great, but the time hasn't come yet. However, it's okay because it's just a matter of time and a guy will come back. Elsewhere, a bunch of goblins are defeated on the ground and a guy is cut down. The knight asks who he is. The man pulling out the sword says it's impressive since most people would be begging for their lives now. He's a blue-haired guy who says that someone who has the potential to become a hero. The boy asks who he is and why he killed everyone. Is he trying to steal the items? The guy says he's going to die soon, so he doesn't need to know. He just tells him to come at him, or he'll die standing still. The boy knows it won't be easy, and the worst part is that there's no way out of that place. He runs towards the guy, but he easily defends himself. Even with a series of attacks, nothing happens. Then, with one move, his sword goes flying. When he looks up, he gets kicked in the stomach and thrown against the wall. It seems the sword flew away with an arm, and the boy is being called a disappointment, saying that it looks like he got excited for nothing with this job of killing a hero. Actually, his arm is still there and he apologizes, asking not to be killed. But the guy says he'll help by making it as painless as possible, and with that, he delivers a killing blow. The psychopath still makes a disgusted face, saying he thought there would be a decent fight. He approaches the boy and tells him not to worry, that he fought well against the boss, and that's what everyone will know. It's a shame this always happens in misclassified dungeons. Looking at the photo he took, he says this is another one for the collection. Then he feels a chill and says he hates feeling that disgusting sensation and asks why the priestess is there. An extremely dangerous villain enters the scene, saying she came to collect the precious ingredients. The guy says it's a bunch of trash, they should have let them grow a bit more. The woman looks back and asks if he's doubting the master. He tells her to stop being so sensitive and take care of the rest, and says they better start sending him to fight S-rank hunters because that's the only reason he's in all this. She begins the ritual and tells him not to worry, he'll have his chance soon. Something starts coming out of the wound and she's curious to see what it will be this time. With that, a hand comes out of the wound and she says it seems to be what she thought. The master was right and a monster is in front of her. Meanwhile, in front of another gate, the protagonist arrives and a guy says he finally showed up. Clearly, it's the guy from the Overkill Guild, and our boy asks what he's doing there. The guy says he's flattered to be recognized like that, and our boy says it's obvious. Since he's the only one carrying weapons back and forth. Tae-hun then says he's there to clear the dungeon, and the protagonist asks what he's doing in AD rank 1. He says he's completing it for a guildmate who got sick. With that, the rest of the team calls them to hurry up. Our boy has no choice but to enter this dungeon. The problem is that this forces him to change his plans. Everyone enters and Tae-hun asks our boy why he doesn't want to join the guild. Tae-hun asks if he heard about the C-rank gate that was auctioned off this morning, and he says yes. The other two in front comment that the guild won the bid on the first try. The protagonist wonders if these guys found something. At this moment, Tae-hun asks if he's interested in buying gates. He says if he joins the guild, he could easily buy anything above B rank. Because being in the Overkill Guild obviously has many advantages. Being in such a guild means being envied and adored by the public. Besides getting more jobs, you also get paid much better. Not to mention you can claim special things. For example, in special gates, you can get an entry ticket. Additionally, many of the treasures are confiscated by the guilds that own the gates. Tae-hun says he knows the protagonist has a goal and their guild can help with whatever it is. However, Junseo responds that it's none of his business. He turns and says he understands that no one has ever refused an invitation from Overkill. But he makes it clear that no matter what happens, you will not join any guild. With that, he walks away, leaving Tae-hun disheartened. Tae-hun wonders if this guy has some trauma because of what happened early in his career or something else. But whatever it is, he won't give up. That guy has his eye on the boy. The group continues advancing through the cave and Tae-hun notices that the place is full of spider webs. He finds himself in front of a large opening and knows that from here on, it's monster territory. The knight in front says they seem like beginners, so he'll explain a few things before they enter. They'll be facing a legion of spiders, which are weak creatures but move in large numbers. There are probably at least 50 per group, which should be easy for them to handle. Their teeth have paralyzing acid, so make sure you don't get bitten. Tae-hun warns that the spider group is approaching and tells our boy to be careful. However, he responds that he's just a helper and tells him to focus on the battle. The guy doesn't stop pestering him, saying it's basic for a combatant to protect the supports and healers of the team. The protagonist was about to say that no one follows those rules when someone shouts that the creatures are coming. From the ceiling the legion approaches and the boy, trembling, starts telling himself to calm down. All he has to do is kill those creatures like he trained. A common spider has an E rank difficulty, but a legion automatically raises it to D rank. The group prepares and the spiders jump at them. A step to the side and a slash down the middle takes out the first one. The guy raises his shield and knocks a bunch away. The mage takes the opportunity to use an area lightning ability, electrocuting everyone. Taehun thinks it's not bad for a group of B rank hunters and he won't even need to help. But then Junseo says that the number of spiders coming doesn't look like just 50. There's already one on Taehun's face who activates the flame on his sword and cuts down a bunch. His luck is that even with weak spells, he can kill the spiders so his sword won't break. But then someone screams for help. The group is surrounded by the legion. The shield bearer says he can't defend against so many and there are far more than 50 there. The boy who was trembling says it's impossible and the mage says she's out of mana. Taehun starts running and tells Junseo to come with him, but our boy is leaving, saying he has something else to resolve. But as soon as Taehun looks back, he's about to be attacked by a spider. He yells for the protagonist to duck, but our boy closes his eyes and when he opens them, he forms a grid of the spider. A sword appears on its back at the same second and Taehun just watches. The sword is the best weapon the protagonist can make at this moment. The easiest way would be to conjure dozens of swords and send them at the spiders, but he doesn't have the mana for that. That's why the second best thing is to lift his finger and start manipulating his sword. He looks to the side, sends it at the spiders and it pierces one too many, zigzagging and killing them all. Harboi points his finger and creates a whirlwind of slashes around the two of them. Taehun is completely confused, with a pile of spider corpses at the boy's feet. The sword finishes off the last one and Taehun wonders if this was some kind of area damage ability. The strange thing is that the battle didn't last 10 seconds and he wiped out a legion in that time. He just can't understand how he used materialization for the fight, or worse, that any support could do that. Our boy points to the side and asks if he's going to help those guys because they seem to be in trouble. When Taehun sees the poor adventurers are surrounded and almost dead, he tells the protagonist that he's going to have a chat with him when this is over. He says whatever and just asks him to say he also killed those things because no one will believe it was him. The guy looks, ignores him and goes after the monsters. A while later, people are thanking him for saving their lives and the knight says he was surprised because he looked a lot like the leader of Overkill, but he had no idea it was him. He apologizes for not telling them and says he's there on an investigation. The girl says he doesn't need to say that because they would have died if it weren't for him. And the girl blushes, saying he was so cool killing the monsters and asks for a photo. However, someone calls for them. It's the protagonist and another guy from the group who went mining. The guy says there aren't many other creatures in the area, but there's a passage in the way and he thinks it goes deeper. The knight says he thinks it's better for them to go back because it's getting dangerous. Clearly the number of spiders and the layout of that dungeon don't match the information the scout provided. Dungeon is nothing more than a term for locations where various monsters from another world appear. Before the whole ecosystem of hunters was developed, many people needed information about the dungeons. It was too risky for someone to enter a dungeon without knowing what was there, and that's what created the scouts, people with abilities to move stealthily and detect threats. The emergence of this profession drastically increased the survival rate in dungeons. The knight says that considering all this dungeon must be one that was misclassified. The guy hesitates for a second and says they should continue since Taehun is there. The guy says he understands but can't put everyone at risk just because Taehun is there. The guy insists and the girl says it's a perfect chance. But their leader asks if this dungeon is more important than everyone's lives. They get scared until Taehun says he doesn't mind. He's there to investigate, but he's still a member of the group, so if they want to continue, it's fine. With that, the protagonist agrees and the guy thanks him, saying having his help will be great. He then asks Taehun to be the leader, but he says he doesn't mind. He can continue leading. The guy says he understands and says they will continue and asks everyone to follow. They continue entering the cave until they find themselves in front of a giant door. I've seen this story of a giant door before, guys." He warns that they are about to enter the boss room, so he will give a brief explanation. The boss of that dungeon is the Queen Spider of the Legion of Higher Difficulty. She doesn't have many combat abilities and is easy to deal with. However, there are a few things all this is old information, so they don't know what's on the other side of the door. "Clearly your information is messed up, my boy. But that's okay." He says they will charge in and opens the door. At that moment, they find themselves in a sort of cavern and Tae-hun can't sense any movement. What's even stranger is that he can't feel absolutely anything. The guy tells them to prepare. The boss has arrived along with the other spiders. They see the creature and are relieved because it doesn't seem to have changed. With that, she conjures an electric circle and sends it towards the creature. She gets all excited that she hit. But then something changes. The boss spider is actually already dead. The guy is confused, he's never heard of a boss being dead when they arrive. That's when he asks what that is. A giant leg strikes the boss's body. The monster roars, revealing an interaction with a B+ ranked boss. She smiles at them and the group is already terrified. She launches an attack, but Tae-hun steps in front and defends the group. Now they're in trouble. He wasn't expecting to see a monster above B rank in this place. Any simple attack from him won't do anything, but the weapons also won't last a single blow. He needs to end this in one move and he jumps and strikes the belly, but the entire sword shatters. He manages to make a small scratch, but the spider comes to hit him. At that moment, something appears and blocks the attack. It's a sword from Junseo, who says that one is just a temporary fix. He'll make a decent one soon. The protagonist thinks that even with a misclassification, the boss of this place should have been the C-rank Spider Lord. They're very lucky Tae-hun is there. Even for him, it wouldn't be easy. Killing a B-rank creature is completely different. The monster keeps attacking and Tae-hun keeps defending. A B+ ranked boss can easily fight an A-rank hunter. The problem is he knows about Iratha's special ability, so Tae-hun will need help. Junseo tells the team to start moving because the spider is no longer targeting them. Scared, the guy asks what he means by that. They start questioning why he registered as a helper if he has all these abilities. He looks back and says that before resolving that, they have other things to take care of. He stretches out his hand and starts summoning a sword, a staff and a shield for the team. He says they can choose to take the weapon, clear the dungeon, or run outside. But he hopes they make a good decision. With that, the spiders are cut down. The guy is impressed with the sword. It's by far the best weapon he's ever used. It's almost like cutting through paper and the monsters become easy. The mage raises the staff and unleashes an electric spell. Everyone immediately notices that her power has increased dozens of times. They can't understand how these weapons can be so strong. He made them out of nowhere and now everyone wants to know who he is. Tae-hun is struggling to hold back a B-rank creature. She keeps screaming and jumps at him. With that, he says to himself that he will have to end this as quickly as possible. He lunges at her and the spider comes for the attack. At that moment, he slashes and she falls to the ground. Tae-hun observes that the sword is still intact, but strangely, a bunch of spiders starts descending. The group wonders why there are so many creatures alive if they already cleared the area. Tae-hun tells everyone to fall back, thinking there will be trouble if she uses that special ability. Arachnid can sacrifice other spiders to heal herself. That means you won't be able to defeat her until all the smaller ones are eliminated. Once again, he activates the power on his sword, saying he will have to cut everything at once. However, at that moment, the sword cracks. Tae-hun says that's quite impressive. He didn't have mana when he made that sword, but it's incredible that he managed to break it. He then summons a large sword and tells him to use that. Explaining that he knows the guy likes one-handed sword, but this is the most durable one he can create. The moment he grabbed the sword, he knew he would have enough strength to kill all the spiders. He said it was strange to use a two-handed sword, but it would do for now. He activated Berserker and charged at the boss. The poor thing couldn't do anything and Tae-hun just passed by its back. Junseo was just observing that this was the unique ability of Berserkers and he's sure Tae-hun could never use it at full strength. That's because it's a class that loses control of itself in exchange for absolute power. That's why they always prefer not to risk destroying the weapon by using all their strength. With that, Tae-hun releases an explosion and relaxes a bit. He needed to dissipate all the energy, or he would go into full berserker mode. He's even trembling in the thought that this is the second time he's managed to use that ability. Apparently, he was wrong about the boy. In fact, the powers he has are something no one has ever seen. He will probably become the global sensation once people find out. They're just standing there observing the corpse. And Junseo is just looking at the demonic energy, which is much more than any other dungeon he's seen. He asks Tae-hun if he can feel anything from the monster's corpse. The guy responds that no, it's definitely dead and there are no other spiders to revive it, and that makes Junseo realize that even high-level hunters can't sense this energy. He approaches and activates the demonic energy absorption. Finally, he's filled the bar and now gains the ability to create demonic weapons. After a demonic weapon is created, it is saved in memory and he can materialize it without spending more demonic energy. Unfortunately, our boy has no memory of this type of item. He'd hoped to receive something related to mana. But it seems this will be it for now. At least the bar is still there, so he will be able to receive more rewards. Not to mention that air action also filled half of this bar. At that moment, Tae-hun calls for our boy and says he wants to talk about something. He asks what it is this time and the guy says he wants to apologize. Explaining that he insisted too much on him joining the guild even after he had already said he didn't want to. The protagonist says that's kind of unexpected and the knight beside him wonders if he's seen right. The legendary Tae-hun is apologizing to a D-rank boy. Or maybe he doesn't know, but this guy might be a hidden master of the guild. Someone calls for them and when they turn around, the friends say that finally all the monsters are gone. They comment on how the weapons are incredible and cut through anything with no effort. The mage was about to talk about how impressive the staff was when the knight approached and said they should leave this dungeon and contact the association. They found it strange and said they had to thank the two there as well. However, he just kept pushing, saying they should get out of that scary place as soon as possible. All the knight wanted was to avoid getting involved in the affairs of these high-level guilds, because it's always trouble. The only thing he didn't expect was to discover a big secret like this guy. The protagonist says it's fine and tells him to just tell him. He's sure Tae-hun knows he put the contract rules on those people, but he, as the boss, didn't need to apologize. However, Tae-hun says that from now on he won't follow him anymore. That doesn't mean he's giving up because the opportunity is always open and he asks if he wants to sign a deal. He's sure he will like the new terms. The scene changes and our boy are at the guild with Huizhu saying it's a pleasure to see him again. She says she's the secretary and will talk about the contract terms and he thanks her. She explains that he doesn't need to worry because they are in the area with the best security and no information will leave there. Then she hands over the contract saying it contains everything the guy offered him in the dungeon. If any changes are needed, just let her know. Our boy thinks it's really in line with what the guy offered. He places it on the table and says he'll sign it. In the conversation, he asks what this support deal is about. Tae-hun said that the Overkill Guild would provide all kinds of support behind the scenes, but no one would know he joined that guild. He understands that Junseo has some reason not to join, so he wants to help him without him needing to reveal it. The guild would provide absolutely everything he needed, from equipment to materials or gates. The contract would be for formality, but everything would be kept secret. Junseo questions why the guy is offering all this. Tae-hun says it's obvious it wouldn't be for free and he would ask for help on some jobs. However, he wouldn't be obligated either and would always have the option to refuse. Junseo then asks what happens if he refuses everything. The guy says that's fine. His intention is just to form a relationship between the Overkilled Guild and our boy and prevent him from joining other guilds. That's what he's offering. At that moment, the association's investigation team appears and asks if the master is okay. Tae-hun turns and says he'll answer our boy after they're out of there. But he hopes it's a good offer for him, explaining that he values his ability much more than he can offer. Now Junseo thinks that all he wanted was to maintain a good relationship without having to join the guild, but it's even better to have such a deal. He places the paper on the table and asks when he can ask for supplies. Huizhu says he can request something now if he wants and she hands him a box. saying it's a gift from the leader for accepting. As soon as he opens it, a purple glow radiates and he just thanks her. With that, he hands over an entire list of everything he wants. She takes a look and asks how long it will take. She says at least a week and says she didn't want to interfere, but these items won't do him any good. He says it's okay, it's not for him, but for someone else. The scene changes to another place and our boy looks at his phone, wondering if she'll be around now. There's a blonde girl in the middle of the crowd looking a bit shy. Our boy looks and says there she is, the A-rank hunter named Jahan. In a flashback, a fire arrow pierces through the chests of two monsters. The creatures fall to the ground and it was Jahan. She was considered the blessed archer after the player selection. Timidly, she approaches the information desk and says she wants to request entry to a gate. She hands over her ID and the staff says it's incredible that she's an A-rank hunter. So why does she want to go to a C-ranked gate? Embarrassed, she says she actually wanted to go to a D-ranked gate. The two were a bit confused. In her history, it's clear that she has only been to 2 dungeons so far. It's normal to hear about someone with weak powers giving up, but not someone with so much power. Seeing her writing, the guy thinks she must have her reasons. It's a shame, but soon she'll probably be downgraded. The rank of an awakened is decided mana they possess. When the blue energy fell to the earth, each person's body absorbed a different amount. It took some time, but they discovered that those with more mana gained the best abilities. Thus, people were distributed into different ranks based on their mana amount. However, the rank was not permanent. A low-ranked person could clear several dungeons and advance in rank with the association's authorization. And of course, the opposite is also true. At that moment, Jahan hands over the paper and the woman asks if she has a group. She replies no, so the secretary says she will look for people to go with her. But she explains that it's hard to find people to go to a D-ranked gate, so it will take some time. Jahan feels a bit embarrassed and asks if she could go alone. The woman says she could if she got permission, but she doesn't. She asks if she wants to take the test to get permission and she says no. She'd rather wait for a partner. The secretary then said she almost forgot to remind her. Next month, she will have to renew her hunter license for the first time. And she tells her she will need to clear C rank or higher dungeons or at least pass the A rank test to keep that license. Jahan feels a bit embarrassed and Junseo is just there observing. The poor girl walks away, talking to herself, saying she didn't think it would be so hard to sign up for a gate. She should have just done it online instead of coming to a place with so many people. But she had promised herself she wouldn't lose this rank. After all, if it's a D rank gate she knows that won't happen again. Then she receives an invitation and sees that it took less time than the woman said. Seeing it's just a D rank person, she thinks it's okay since the plan was to go alone anyway. In front of the gate, she feels strange because it's been a while since she put on adventure clothes. Then someone appears asking if she's Jahan. It's our boy who introduces himself, says he'll be her support and greets her. She thanks him, introduces herself and he apologizes for being late. I still don't know where he lives to be late every time there's a gate. The protagonist knows that in her past life she failed the test twice and fell to C rank. Even so, she later managed to become the blessed archer by receiving a special talent. He already knows what this talent is and that she doesn't even need to become a player to have it. So the plan is to awaken her ability by force. Inside the dungeon, the goblins are wandering around looking for a target. The creatures leave and she notices that the information on her watch was correct. It detects mana and it seems it was worth the high price. She looks at Junseo, says she wanted to train alone and asks if he minds if she hunts without help. He says it's okay and she doesn't need to worry. Just let him know if she needs some arrows and he'll make them for her. With that, she thanks him and stands up aiming. She shoots an arrow. I think she missed, man, the arrow just evaporated a goblin's head. The green creatures turn to try to shoot back, but she fires another cannon and evaporates them. To Junseo, the natural strength of her attacks is much higher than most A-rank hunters. The problem is she can't always be precise. Ah, that explains it. Her best record is hitting 3 targets with 3 arrows. With that, she concentrates, saying she'll finish this with 2 more. But she gets startled when the goblin blows a horn. Immediately, a legion comes and her watch starts shaking. The poor girl is surrounded and now has no idea where to shoot. A goblin is already coming from behind until a legion of swords appears around her. Our boy, all calm, says it looks like she needed help. She's confused and asks if he's not a D rank creator, and he confirms. With that, he says she needs to shoot an arrow in that direction. It has to be the strongest attack she can muster. She says okay, while wondering what this crazy guy is thinking. With that, the shot goes into the forest and she asks what they're going to do. He says now they run because the path is clear. With that, he finds himself in front of a huge mountain. She says they finally escape, while wondering how they managed to retreat from the goblins. Actually, that's not exactly what happened. When they got close to this place, the creatures were afraid to advance. She can't quite process it because everything happened at once. But why was that guy so calm about it? She wanted to leave, so she said it was better to give up and go back. However, Junseo said that was an option. The goblins were very alert and wouldn't leave that area for a long time. Since he had knocked down the help signal, they would have to wait for all the creatures to disappear. She asked how long that would take and he said many hours. Maybe a whole afternoon. With that, she was scared and asked why it would take so long. But actually, that was a lie. The goblins would leave in about 30 minutes at most because they are not systematic hunters. This is just an excuse from Junseo because he needs to get her into that cave somehow. If he just said that was the plan, she would run away, saying she was scared. She apologizes, saying it's all her fault because if she had killed the goblins, none of this would have happened. Trembling, she says to herself that she is getting in the way even in a D rank dungeon. When she was about to start crying, he told her to wake up and said that since they had plenty of time, he would ask for a favor. She was confused, but he said he would explain every detail. With that, they entered the cave and she questioned if he really needed her help. Even though she was an A rank, she had no experience and only did everything he commanded. The place they were in was actually a training dungeon. A place that has elite monsters but no bosses. He explained that he needed to kill a creature in this place, but no one trusted him and she was the first person who agreed to join the group. The protagonist was doing all this to see if she had a reaction. She hesitated for a second and said that if he was really okay with someone like her, then she would help. Remembering that when she was in danger, he also helped and she also knew very well what it was like to be rejected by all the groups. That's when her watch started beeping and a giant foot stepped in front of her. She was trembling, but Junseo was calm, pointing the flashlight at an elite monster. She told him to step back while thinking that even though it was elite, it was only D rank. If she could land a precise arrow, it would surely be enough. An attack went straight to the monster's head, but it used its club to block. She realized she would have to use her maximum power and conjured another attack. However, her mana started to dissipate and she realized she was trembling a lot. At that moment when she looked ahead, the goblin was coming. Junseo grabbed her by the collar and threw her back. The monster struck with its club if she called out his name. With that, she remembered a time she went into a dungeon with other people and they complained that she almost hit them with an arrow. She said she missed the target, but the girl said she wouldn't have to be compensated or pay the price. After that, several teams started rejecting her. No one wanted to team up and everyone considered her the most useless A-rank hunter. She told herself she should give up on all of this. Right then, she was about to be struck by the boss. Junseo said to himself that he hated pretending. He set an aura sword and blocked the monster's attack. She asked how he did that, but he ignored her and told her to listen to what he was going to say. Now the most difficult part of the plan had passed and the item would surely activate. He kept trying to buy time, telling her she would see a mark on the monster's head and just needed to shoot with all her strength. She felt strange, as if all of her senses had become sharper. She stood up, saying she was confused, but she could clearly see the target. She knew exactly where to hit and it was just one shot away. With that, she opened her eyes, pulled the bow and shot towards the boss. Junseo was excited that at least everything had worked. The attack hit, charged and exploded the boss's head. Seeing that made him think it was all worth it. With that, the boss's body fell to the ground and the creature was full of holes. Jet Han was exhausted and he said she must have felt strange. However, he needed that extreme sensation to amplify her senses. That was the only way for her to understand her potential. Jahan asked who he was and how he knew all these things would happen and what he meant by potential. Our boy said there was no need for all that and they had plenty of time. But she just told him to stop stalling and answer quickly. Suddenly, she started trembling and was about to faint. In the next scene, he was carrying her on his back. It had indeed been a lot of work to get an ally, but at least he managed it alike on this video. Once outside, she apologizes, saying she wasn't feeling like herself. She explains that she didn't know how to act around someone she doesn't know and apologizes again for suspecting the protagonist. Junseo, feeling a bit awkward, says it's all okay. While she's being all cute, he reassures her that it's not a problem, especially since they managed to hunt and kill the boss. He then asks to take a look at the necklace he had given her earlier. She reaches into her pocket, asking for a second and then hands it to our boy. He sees that the crystal has lost a lot of its color, indicating it was definitely used. That item is called the meteoric sensation and is something only found in the harpy's nest. It's an item that can amplify all of a person's senses and is automatically activated when certain requirements are met. It enhances all information processing to an extreme level and sometimes for a split second, the person using it can experience superhuman strength. The only problem is that the person needs to be feeling something extremely intense for it to activate. That's why he tried to ensure that Jayahan was terrified of that creature. The only problem is that this item is so rare that he had given up on that option. But who would have imagined that he would get the chance to acquire one directly from the guild? It allowed her to feel, for a second, the potential she already has within her. Junseo tells her that she must remember that her primary focus is always to hit the target. To achieve that, she will need to change bows. He explains that with a much larger one, she wouldn't have to fear creatures getting close because she could stay far away. Chiha, feeling embarrassed, just listens to the boy's tips. She thanks Junseo, who awkwardly asks what she's thanking him for. She says that at the moment she was about to die, she felt something in that pendant. For a second, she found the confidence that she could hit any target and her eyes became sharper than ever. At that moment, she saw a mark on the monster. Awkwardly figuring with her fingers, she says that although she is rank A, she's actually more of a rank D. But even being so incapable, she realized in that short time that Junseo did everything to help her. She's struggling to say something, but can't. He tells her she doesn't need to force herself because he's going to give her his number, so if she wants, she can just get in touch. Hearing this, she relaxes a bit and says that's exactly what she wanted. However, when Junseo grabs his phone, something catches his attention. Taven had said something urgent came up and asked him to get in touch. Meanwhile, at the Hunter Association, Taven was talking to someone, saying they needed to talk after a meeting. Obviously, it was Junseo who agreed and thanked him for the item. Taehun said it was good the item was useful and mentioned that he would need his help soon. At that moment, someone knocked on the door. It was Kuzu, who said the leader of the Hunter Association wanted to speak with him. On the way, she mentioned that this was unusual since that guy normally sends requests. She asked Ho-hoon why they would want to see him personally. One of the few options is that an S-rank gate has appeared again. Tae-jaeun said he wasn't worried because Jun-soo had agreed to help. If he can fight like last time, everything will be fine. He was already smiling, thinking it was a great choice to build a relationship with Jun-soo. Meanwhile, Hui-soo was wondering why the boss was so excited. Remembering our protagonist, she asked if it was because of that boy. The only thing she didn't understand yet was why Taehun offered unlimited support to a guy like that. One of the few options is that this guy has more impressive abilities than she realizes. However, she keeps an eye on Taehun. This girl seems to be jealous of our boy. As he reaches the door, the guy asks if he's alone. Tavim looks confused, questioning if they were expecting someone else. The guy says yes, because the leader of the hunters mentioned he had called 2 people. Tavim then asked who else would be coming today. The guy smiled, saying that he finally arrived. In the background, the 2 had already turned around when the guy called for the boy. It was the purple-haired guy with the scar, who said he missed Tae-hun. Hosu knew very well that this guy was the only person Tae-hun disliked. He got right in Tae-hun's face and said he missed him, joking around about standing in front of the great genius of the Overkill Guild. However, Tae-hun just put his hand on his shoulder and said he didn't have time for childish provocations. The guy mentioned that he knew Tae-hun had been very busy visiting all the low-ranked dungeons lately. Pori-su asked what he was talking about. The guy said that Tae-hun had been hunting only in weak dungeons and got lucky that one was misclassified, or else his reputation would have been ruined. Wasu wanted to respond, but Tae-hun just said it wasn't worth it. Then the guy at the door informed them that the leader was waiting. He went in and asked the boss if he could let them in. I thought it would be some super buff hunter, but it was just an old man saying these people never change. He immediately informed them that an unconfirmed gate appeared 3 days ago. Tae-hun questioned if something was misclassified. The president said, unfortunately, they had no idea since they couldn't measure the mana of the place. The purple-haired guy looked very confused, and Tae-hun found it very strange because he had never heard of a gate where you couldn't measure the mana. Gates are usually classified using 2 methods. In the first, you look at the amount of mana, which indicates the type of monsters there. In the other, the association sends some explorers to check the creatures and decide the rank. The president explained that they couldn't measure it, and Tae-hun asked if they had already sent any explorers. The guy said yes, they had sent 5. However, obviously, none came back alive. The other hunter said this was crazy. He was called to go to a place with no information. But the guy reminded him that if the gate's seal is broken, the creatures will start roaming the city. When that happens, the entire country has to mobilize to prevent the nation from being destroyed. The president said that even if he didn't want to, he had to ask because it was an emergency. Looking at both, he informed them that they had no choice and had to clear the gate for the city's sake. As help, they would also receive support from the Himu Guild. He then informed them that they would start the mission in 2 days and would receive the maximum rewards. Tae-hun asked that they could choose only members of their guilds. The guy said he could choose anyone. But the information couldn't lead to the public to prevent hysteria. At that moment, Taekum smiled and the guy next to him noticed. At the Shinwa Guild building, the purple-haired guy arrived and everyone welcomed the boss. He couldn't forget that little smile, showing that Tae-hun was very confident with some kind of plan. That obviously didn't make him happy, so he told everyone he wanted her in the group. He was referring to Irin Kong, and everyone informed him that she wasn't even part of their guild. The guy left, saying he didn't care and that they better call her, or everyone would be fired. 2 days passed and Tae-hun's group was at the gate. With him were our protagonists and the bodyguards. The girl mentioned that the time was approaching and asked about the other guilds. The bald guy informed her that there were still 5 minutes left, so theoretically, no one was late. She pulled out her weapon, saying that maybe with holes in their heads, they would think faster. But the guy punched her head, reminding her that here, they were all allies. Tavam then turned to the protagonist and thanked him for accepting a request. Junseo said that he helped him, so now he had to return the favor. But the truth is that 5 days ago, a dungeon window appeared for him. He knows that this type of mission was extremely rare even in his past life. He wonders why he is receiving a mission when other players haven't even been selected yet. The only thing he knows is that this type of secret quest gives a bunch of legendary rewards, and obviously, by coincidence, it was at this gate that Tae-hun called him. So Tae-hun calls the protagonist over and warns him that he will apologize in advance for someone's behavior. At that moment, someone approaches, saying there's a lot to do. It's obvious that the Shinwa Guild members, remarking that it seems overkill, is very idle. They probably think that's why they only stick to low-level dungeons. The girl wants to say something, but the bald guy tells her to let it go. Junseo knows very well that the media is always talking about the competition between these two guilds. Then the leader of the Shinwa guys takes a look. He sees the protagonist and starts laughing, asking if that was Tae-hun's ace in the hole, commenting that judging by his clothes, the boy must think it's a picnic. He then glares at Tae-hun, suggesting he must think the mission is a joke. The guild members tell their leader to calm down and focus on the mission, and Yu Ran Kong, from the back of the group, says that every second counts. I knew she was bad, but I didn't realize she was this malicious. Even the girl from Overkill is shocked, asking why they brought you Ran Kong. This woman is the only elemental master in the country who can control all 6 elements, but she relaxes, saying with so many prepared people, this dungeon is already won. However, Junseo knows that in the past life, this group failed, so this won't be easy. Out of the 8 people who entered, only Tae-hun came out alive due to his ability to cut portals. It became news for being the place where 7 high-ranked people perished. The problem is that since the association hid information about this place, he has no idea what awaits them. Inside the dungeon, they are beating everything and wondering why it's so easy. Even Junseo finds it strange. They walk through the mansion's corridors. Everything is so easy that they have time to admire the place. Until the guy with the glasses notices something. The door they entered through shuts in front of everyone. He tries to open it, but warns that it's impossible to get out. They count to 3 and everyone attacks. Nothing happens, so the leader tells them to step aside. But then some puppets attack him from behind. He turns with a punch and the dolls disintegrate. He tells everyone that this place is so easy that he hasn't used any abilities yet. Then the blonde girl asks what's going on. The monsters he just killed are already regenerating. He crosses his arms, saying now it's getting interesting. He creates 2 giant hands, saying it's finally starting. The dolls regenerate and appear in front of everyone. But at the same time, the leader punches them. The poor things are smashed to the ground, while the Overkill members provide some support. In the background, Yuran Kong asks what our boy does, to which he replies that he is a creator. She says she has the power to end this but won't waste energy on such a group. Observing Taekwondo, she remarks that she was excited when they said the best would be there, but she says, for all their reputation, they're not there. They're a disappointment and she would have preferred to decline the offer. Jun So is just watching, noticing that the creatures have a strange energy around them. He realizes that the puppets are connected by some strings. Looking up, he sees that all the demonic energy is being drawn to a strange object. He wonders what happens if he destroys it. The problem is that he doesn't want to reveal his abilities. At this moment, Yuran Kong creates a giant ice block just to crush an insect. Jun So questions why she doesn't use her power to help others. While aiming at a fly, she says she already gave the reason. She electrocutes the bug, saying she only kills what she wants to. Jumso immediately realizes she hates insects. So, he decides to exploit this and asks if she's afraid. She says no. So, he points to the sky and asks what she will do about that. What he created was a shield with a spider right in front of the demonic item. She begins casting a fire spell. Saying she's tired of this, but Junseo starts dismantling the creature. She throws a giant fireball upwards and the purple-haired guy wonders why she's acting like this. Suddenly, all the puppets collapse to the ground. He yells, asking why the monsters aren't moving anymore. The protagonist approaches the strange item, beginning to absorb the energy, realizing that no one else could see it because it was demonic. Tae-hun then suggests they should check out the rest of the floors. The bald guy agrees and tells them to follow him. They enter the next room, seeing more puppets and the purple-haired guy runs ahead. Claiming it's all his. Yell blows the first puppet and Junseo watches from the back, noticing how easy everything seems. After clearing several rooms, Tae-hun tells them to move to the second floor. When the purple-haired guy tries to say something about Tae-hun not being the leader, Tae-hun just turns around, which infuriates him. He curses Tae-hun, saying he would die for ignoring him. However, he feels a strange pain in his hand despite the easy fight. Junseo steps away from the group, wanting to check one of the rooms again. As he approaches, he sees some lines of demonic energy. In the battle, the purple-haired guy struggles, not having time to use his abilities. The team seems to be defending against something invisible. Tae-hun asks if everyone is okay and they respond that it is still easy. That's when Tae-hun notices something. He has no idea where Jun Sae went. Our protagonist is just absorbing energy. He realizes the fight is getting tougher and decides he must participate. But suddenly, a trapdoor opens beneath him. He steps back, wondering what's happening and if these are the enemies. A blonde girl starts climbing out of it and Junseo wonders why a little girl is coming out of there. As soon as she notices him, she gives a non-threatening smile and asks if he is a hunter. Before he can respond, she turns and tells him to follow her, then starts running back to the basement. Junseo calls for her to wait, wondering how she knew he was a hunter. The girl mentions that a woman downstairs said the hunters were coming to save her and she is sure he must be one of them. He seems confused and she asks if he doesn't recognize her. The girl says it's strange since the woman mentioned the hunter would arrive just as he did. Meanwhile, the orange-haired girl stands there despondent. Junseo realizes her mental state is completely shaken. When he mentions being from the Hunter Association, she turns around. She stands up excitedly, asking if he really was sent by them. He confirms and asks her to explain what happened. She collapses to the floor, saying she's so relieved and starts to thank him. She says she'll tell him everything that happened. When she came to explore this dungeon, 3 others had already failed. As soon as she entered, she was immediately attacked by the puppets. She tried to turn back, but the door was strangely already shut. Junseo remembers something similar happened to his group. He asks if she knows what happened to the other scouts and she says she called for them at the entrance, but those who appeared did not seem conscious. She explains that she fled and ran into this little girl who helped her. The blonde girl says they played many games together too. Junseo asks the girl's name. She says her name is Elizabeth, but he can call her Betty. He acknowledges this and tells them they need to leave because it's not safe here. Elizabeth pauses and asks why it would be unsafe, saying she knows it's much more dangerous outside. Meanwhile, the group continues fighting the creatures. Even Tahoon is starting to struggle. Then he notices that the monster's ability is fading. They are humanoid creatures under the effect of invisibility. However, strangely, someone's Hunter Association card falls to the ground. Tahoon remembers seeing this name on the list of the missing. The Overkill girl comments about the same thing, telling Tahoon not to kill this person because the ones attacking are all the explorers who disappeared. Tahoon knows that now that they are visible, it would be very easy to kill them. But then someone screams in the room. The purple-haired guy starts shouting, saying it looks like it's just a bunch of explorers. He readies his fists, saying now that they're visible it will be easy, and prepares to punch, warning that they will die a second time. But something swiftly passes by his nose, making his face bleed. He asks who did that. The Overkill girl tells him that those are explorers he can save, so he shouldn't kill them. The guy says anyone who fights him either kills or dies and warns that she won't be an exception now. He starts getting attacked by the explorers while saying if she tries anything she will die. Taehyun tells Kim to calm down and asks for his cooperation. Kim retorts that he's not interested and accuses Taehyun of not wanting to cooperate in killing these creatures. Taehyun offers Kim all the dungeon's items if he agrees to cooperate. Kim defends against an attack, saying that in that case, he'll agree. Taehyun thanks him, but knows this won't last long. At this moment, the Overkill girl calls out to Taehyun. She cutely apologizes, saying it was her fault. Tinghuan tells her it'll talk about it later and orders her to stay focused. The primary goal is to find a way to save the explorers. Someone mentions the puppets outside. It's Elizabeth, who says that as long as the creatures are connected by the strings, they won't be destroyed. She asks Junseo if he doesn't find that scary. Junseo, on the other hand, doesn't want to know if there's a way to destroy the strings and turn the people back into humans. She explains that there is, but the strings must be removed correctly, or the body will fall apart. She asks if he liked that answer and Jun-se realizes she's providing too many details for some reason. He considers asking more questions when Kim declares he'll give them 20 more seconds, or he'll kill all the monsters. The Overkill girl asks the boss what they will do. She tells Yurin Kong to use some ice ability to immobilize the monsters, but Yurin just turns around and tells her to stop giving orders, saying this dance is already boring enough. Kim starts a countdown from 10. While everyone continues fighting, he counts and reaches 7. At 6, he activates his aura. At 2, he summons his giant hands and announces he's going to finish it. When he reaches 1, he prepares his punch. But strangely, his power ceases and he realizes it's the same as before. Junseo comments to someone that she stopped the movements just in time. Walking with the girl, he says they almost lost everyone, but now he'll take over. A while later, Tavim asks where Junseo was. He explains he had to handle something and Taehyun tells him to be more careful. At that moment, the overkilled girl notices something. The explorers from before have turned invisible again. The team has to defend themselves once more from something they can't see. Taehyun realizes that for some reason, the creatures are ignoring him. Both move towards Junseo, who can see them due to the demonic energy. Taehyun blocks an attack and Junseo says he can see them and will mark them, but warns not to destroy the bodies. Taehyun agrees, fearing the explorers might die. Then you see some blue pieces flying and wonders if that's it. He lands a blow with the flat side of his sword, making the explorer visible. The monster is sent flying and he can't believe it actually worked. Everyone gets the tip that the circle in the middle of the chest is a kind of weak point. With this, the explorer who was struck is sent flying and hits the ground. Kim asks why. Strangely, the monsters now seem easy to handle. While Junseo is just smiling at Kim's anger, the members of Kim's guild approach. Taehyun asks Junseo why he went back to the first four. Junseo, with lifeless eyes, says he'll explain everything. He explains that while exploring, he strangely found one of the missing explorers and that's how he learned about each of their weak points. Taehyun then asks about the little girl. Junseo simply says she helped him find the other explorer. Kim is just watching, saying this is very suspicious. The overkill girl asks why he's finding it strange, since it's just a little girl. Kim states the obvious. It makes no sense for a child to be in the middle of this dungeon, implying it's impossible for her to be wandering through the city and end up here without being noticed. Taehyun acknowledges this point but says it's not necessary to draw conclusions yet. Kim warns he's tired of this and is getting ready to destroy everyone there. Taehyun loses his temper and says it looks like he will have to teach a real lesson for the sake of the mission. Everyone strangely seems engulfed in a purple aura, criticizing each other. The girls start getting in each other's faces, claiming their respective masters are better. The argument escalates as the purple energy intensifies. Taehyun and Kim both have their magic activated. Junseo feels something strange. He can't understand why he's feeling so much anger when he has no relation to anyone there. Then the girl next to him says that things change a lot when she manipulates emotions just a little. She thanks Junseo for bringing her closer, allowing her to activate her ability without any worry. Junseo realizes he knew she was a monster the moment she appeared, but she had manipulated his mind to change how he acted. He begins preparing his weapon, realizing it's too late. He has to stop her and everyone else before things get out of hand. Suddenly, he finds himself isolated in a world with no exit. He notices that demonic lines are surrounding his entire body, as well as everyone else's, wrapped in the same energy. He had no idea the demonic energy did this until he began to perceive it. However, he starts dismantling everything with a slight grin, obviously activating his demonic energy absorption. All the power in the room begins flowing to him and Junseo says she chose the worst possible target. Everyone starts waking up, wondering what happened. The girl smiles, saying his absorption is quite interesting. Junseo tells everyone that she is the enemy that needs to be defeated. However, she just stands there calling for her parents. Something seems to be coming from the ceiling and suddenly, two energies fall between them. The little girl, crying, says those people are hurting her and with that, her puppet parents appear. Without planning, Kim throws himself forward, saying they need to end this. The blonde girl smiles, saying it's time for her brother to shine. But Kim lands a direct punch on the overkill girl, sending her crashing into the wall. The blonde girl smiles, saying it's time for her brother to shine. But Kim lands a direct punch on the overkill girl, sending her crashing into the wall. Typhoon immediately asks what Kim thinks he's doing, but Kim is already manipulated by the demonic energy again and the strings are going straight to his mouth. He says that Louis did a very good job. Junseo understands why he felt demonic energy in Kim's hand. The puppet's brother had been controlling Kim the entire time. The girl starts laughing, saying she is very happy when everyone is fighting among themselves. At that moment, Taehyun jumps towards Kim, saying they need to immobilize him for this to continue. The overkill members smile, saying it's great news. With that, the poor guy is being beaten up until a barrier surrounds him and everyone asks what it is. The guild girl explains it's an unbreakable ability he uses when he's about to die, and the biggest problem is that he'll stay in that state for many hours. The little girl calls her brother useless, but now the group is stopped and confident. Suddenly, she summons a giant aura, saying it's time to end this. Tae-hun realizes the parents are very different. Each of them is as powerful as a dungeon boss. This makes focusing on the girl the riskiest move. Tae-hun knows the right thing is to kill these monsters first, but he has a bad feeling. Despite the logic, the girl is likely capable of more than she appears. He tells Mayan to handle the female puppet while he takes down the male. Ju readies her pistols and agrees. The puppet father starts advancing and Tae-hun immediately draws his flaming blade. Kim is still trapped in his own ability, while Junseo watches from the background. Junseo notices that Kim's defensive ability seems to have caused some malfunction in the control of the puppets. He knows it's the same control used on the explorers, but something is off. Kim turned into a puppet in seconds, right after absorbing the energy. This means they are still at risk of being controlled at any moment. However, if she hasn't done so yet, there must be a reason. Chiyui continues shooting and even Yurin Kong starts throwing ice shards. The puppet mother struggles to defend herself while the daughter smiles in the background. Junsel wonders why she wanted to reveal herself. Not only did she lead him to the explorer, but she also showed him the weak points of each puppet. The fact that she wanted to gain confidence before doing this indicates something is wrong. It's almost as if she forced them to fight her. At that moment, the puppet father attacks Tae-hun. He defends and charges again, realizing the creature is strong. However, when his blade strikes the neck, flames burst forth. He knows he can win as long as he keeps using the weapon Junseo created. Jiuyu is almost out of ammunition. She even crafted some in advance, but it's not enough. She tells Mayan to retreat because his attacks have weakened the puppet mother. Enchanted bullet. The shot passes cleanly through the mother and she confidently declares it was easy. The puppet mother falls to the ground with a gaping hole in her chest. The puppet father's body is still ablaze. Taekum thinks to himself that the attacks were simpler than expected, but now there is only one monster left. Even though she has mind control, he is a burst sucker and can handle it. He warns everyone to stay back and be wary of mental attacks. At that moment, the girl calls for her father and mother, lamenting their defeat. Tae-hun, uninterested in her sad speech, advances. The girl stands there, doing nothing, until she smiles and says this is what he deserves. However, the puppet collapses. The group smiles, praising the guild master, and Yurin Kong comments on how anticlimactic it was. A window appears before Junseo and he hopes it's the end of the dungeon. But he sees something that terrifies him. The puppet is still lying dead and Tae-hun remarks that although it's the body of a monster, it's still disturbing. As he turns to leave, they all feel something. All the hunters are paralyzed at once because they sense a terrifying energy. Junseo says he knew this would happen. The objective becomes to defeat Elizabeth Bathory and receive a demon shackle. The little girl emerges from the blood, thanking them. She says she's been waiting for someone to kill her father and mother as they were two selfish beings who sucked her power to live an eternal life. The girl rose up rapidly, but Junseo refrains from commenting because just a moment ago, she was a little girl. Yurin Kong tells everyone to prepare, knowing that while they are not weak, defeating that woman will be no easy task. Elizabeth smiled and said it seemed like they were trying something cute. Strangely, everyone felt something as she activated an energy-draining ability, saying she needed to regain her power. Instantly, everyone started coughing up blood. Yurin found it impossible that the monster could drain so much energy without even a second to prepare. In response, Elizabeth was attacked by a blaze, but Tae-hun stood still while she commented on his strength. However, she stopped his attack with her hand, saying that now that she had transformed, it was useless. She broke his sword, declaring that from now on, such attacks wouldn't happen. She then delivered a powerful blow to his chest, sending him flying. Tae-gun fell to his knees, struggling to breathe. Jun-soo asked Tae-gun how much he used. Confused, Tae-gun listened as Jun-soo inquired about the extent of his berserker ability activation. Jun-Soo knew this ability was dangerous for the mind and body, but he needed this information. He suspected that when Tae-gun killed Araction, he had only activated half of his potential. Tae-hun admitted he could increase his power, but Jun-Seo's sword wouldn't withstand it. Jun-Seo then revealed that if they could buy some time, he would show his true power. Observing the energy Tae-hun used, Jun-Seo announced it was time to show what they had been practicing. He used his ability to construct demonic weapons, which cost 100 points he had been accumulating. A system searched the demon realm for a suitable weapon and Elizabeth watched curiously as the production was completed. A blade engulfed in flames appeared before Tae-hun. This was the demonic sword Levitian, and Jun-Seo told Tae-hun it was time to show his potential. Tae-hun felt something different about the sword. He didn't recognize the type of mana it possessed despite having used many swords before. When he touched the blade, it radiated an aura. Elizabeth noticed the sword had demonic energy and flames, but stated she was resistant to both and activated a blood magic spell. A red territory spread across the room, constantly draining everyone's energy. Jun-Seo recognized it as an area of affectability, weaker than the initial drain but persistent. Urine can collapse, and the monster declared she wouldn't be able to use any mana. The Overkill Guild members couldn't even stand, and Elizabeth announced they would all melt now. But someone stepped beside her. Tavern was the only one still standing. Elizabeth found it strange that he was unaffected by the blood territory, indicating his consciousness was guided by the sword. She raised her hands, inviting him to fight. Tae-hun stomped the ground and leaped at her, but she summoned two giant blood hands to strike him. Unafraid, Tae-hun slashed through the hands with a demonic blade, cutting them in half. Elizabeth was confused, using another hand to protect herself while wondering how he had become so strong. Compared to before, he was at least twice as powerful. Even Jun-Seo was impressed despite his suffering. Tae-hun unleashed a massive slash across the room, hitting Elizabeth directly. Everything fell apart. The main objective of the mission was complete. The vampire boss, Elizabeth, was defeated. Immediately, a box appeared in Jun-Seo's hand, a reward from the system. He hoped it would at least increase his mana. The system then deconstructed the sword, which disintegrated in Tae-hun's hand. However, he could now summon it without using 100 demon energy points. Tae-hun looked at his hand, wondering what had happened. Someone told him not to stand because he wouldn't be able to walk anyway. Jun-Seo comments, impressed that after using all this power, Tae-hun is still conscious, especially since the rest of the group is down. Yerin Kong, despite all her talk, is knocked out cold while the boss has been defeated. However, as Jun-Seo approaches, Elizabeth strangely congratulates him. He wonders how she's alive if the system said she was defeated. Elizabeth explains that she was protected because she manipulated the puppets. She notes that while she senses the same energy from Jun-Seo, he doesn't manipulate anyone. She's only alive because she is the source of the monster's existence. Long ago, she did something impulsively. She has no idea why she made such a nonsensical decision. She had saved some little creatures from their imminent end. The story should have ended there, but those she saved were strangely peculiar. They called her and said they needed to thank her for saving them, which led to her capture. She began interacting and learning about everything they did, not knowing why she wanted to stay. Before long, she had become a regular visitor at their house. It wasn't long, but she was sure she was happy then, until she realized why those creatures had brought her into their family. She was trapped by puppet strings, her body sealed to protect them with her energy. Jun-Seo asks how this is possible and why. Elizabeth says she doesn't know but tells him to look out the mansion window. Strangely, it shows an endless desert. She knows it isn't real, created with her energy to protect the monster family with an illusion. She tells Jun-Seo that his universe likely has portals too since he arrived here. She explains that in her world, as in his, portals started appearing out of nowhere, people awakened and creatures emerged from them. Jun-Seo asks her about the end of the world. She looks confused and says she didn't see it happen. After being trapped in a puppet body, she couldn't move. Recently, she regained consciousness when something strange appeared before her. Her mission was to protect a dungeon from 100 invaders to escape an abandoned world. Jun-Seo is baffled that she's a player with a status window. However, Her body starts to disintegrate and she explains she has no more time to answer. As everything falls apart, she says death isn't so bad. Junseo sees her body breaking and realizes he can't let it happen. He remembers the item he received from the demon gems. Looks at the box thoughtfully and smiles. Elizabeth is confused by his reaction. He pulls out the item and throws it at her, creating a collar around her neck. She asks what he's doing. The item forces the monster into captivity but can only be used when the injuries are fatal. Watching the item activate, Junseo knows it's no coincidence but finds it interesting. When equipped, the target is completely healed of all wounds. Elizabeth is restored to 100% health. Now that they know she's not a child, she is a fully grown monster and becomes a familiar of Junseo. Junseo smiles, saying he's never heard of anyone having a player as their familiar. The system notifies that Elizabeth Bathory is being captured. A golden energy radiates as she's registered in Junseo's system. He looks, noting her different form as a surprise. The once vampire monster has turned into a cat, replacing their formidable vampire with an admirable familiar. Junseo laughs, saying it seems the collar turned into a pet collar. Elizabeth, scared of herself, clearly displeased with being turned into a cat. Bursting with energy, she reverted to her human form, trying to tear off the collar and demanding how Junseo dared do such a thing to her. She begged for mercy and asked him to stop humiliating her. Junseo replied that without her human form, the humiliation was inevitable. The system notified him that he could temporarily activate a familiar's abilities by giving them demonic energy. He removed the demonic power and Elizabeth turned back into an angry cat. Picking her up, she started demanding to be put down. As he held her, Junseo asked if those people really betrayed her. When he placed her on the ground, she said she already explained her story and wouldn't repeat it. He insisted, wanting to know how they used her demonic power to survive. Noting that it didn't make sense for anyone to want to live that way. Looking at the puppets on the floor, he remarked that it didn't seem like a pleasant existence, questioning if those things had any will of their own. Elizabeth explained that this degradation was common for humans as over time the soul and body began to deteriorate. She asked if he was really showing sympathy for those idiots. Junseo turned and said no, but he couldn't believe anyone would want to live that way. Slowly approaching the father's body, he stated that if they transferred their souls, he could find something specific. Holding out his hand, he grabbed an orb, telling her to come closer. Elizabeth found herself lifted, unable to control her body. Junseo explained that it was an essence crystal used by dark mages to store mana. Apparently, the mother of that family used it to transfer everyone's soul into the puppets. Elizabeth started screaming at the orb, asking what he was talking about. Suddenly, she found herself somewhere else. At a table, she told her family she had seen the future many times, but things kept happening. The worlds would keep colliding and it would become more frequent. She said they had a maximum of 5 years to live and there was nothing they could do. Elizabeth, standing there, wondered if this was a memory. The father mentioned they could use an option they had researched, hypothetical other dimensions. The mother said with Elizabeth's power, they could disconnect the mansion from this universe. But that would mean being lost among infinite dimensions, waiting for hundreds or thousands of years. The blonde boy stated this wouldn't apply to Elizabeth. The mother was confused and the boy explained that while this place would extend their lives by a few years, Elizabeth was different. He reminded his parents that without her, they would have died that day. Even if she began to hate them, they had to do everything to save her. Elizabeth asked what they were doing since she trusted them. The family observed with tears in their eyes as she was transformed into a puppet. The boy asked his mother if their minds would remain intact in the puppets. The father responded that they would be fine for a few dozen years, but after that they would likely start to degrade and forget who they were, moving only as functional puppets. Once they disconnected the mansion from that dimension, it would be their turn to protect Elizabeth from the creatures, until someone from another universe arrived to free her. Junseo had spent 50 demonic energy points to see the family's memories. Now crying, Elizabeth asked why they didn't tell her anything. Junseo said that if they had told her, she would have undoubtedly chosen to die. Junseo tells Elizabeth to stop crying and get up because they don't have much time. Elizabeth's power is still enabled for 2 minutes and he says he didn't give her demonic energy for her to just cry. He tells her that she needs to be the one to finish this for the sake of the family that protected her all these years. She must be the one to bring their end. Desperate, Elizabeth asks how she can do such a thing. Junseo tells her to stop being so naive. That family could have spent their last years happily, but they chose a different path. They sealed themselves for eternity to give her a chance to survive. This is the only chance she has to repay their sacrifice. It's the least she can do. Slowly, Elizabeth stands up. She looks at her family, remembering the happy times. She then begins to activate her demonic powers. The entire room explodes and a window appears, stating that the secret objective of her true story has been completed. Elizabeth just stares at the destroyed puppets, tears streaming down her face. While she was crying, Junseo had reached all the dungeon's objectives and received a special reward. Sometime later, everyone was outside the dungeon. A group of adventurers was being led away, including Kim, who had survived. The protagonist felt like he had been there for years, but thought it wouldn't make much sense to say that with Elizabeth around. He asked Elizabeth what she thought of that place and she said there wasn't much mana there. But she would try to live the best life she could since that was what she owed everyone. The scene shifts to a house at night. Yerin Kong is complaining about how the stressful days make her unable to stop drinking. She suddenly stops and starts, wondering why that rat is trying to ruin her night too. The lights turn on and a man comments that calling him a rat is cruel. He brings a glass of wine, saying he was waiting for his partner. Yurin Kang tells him to disappear because the wine bottle he opened is worth more than his life. The man says she is very cruel since he is only there for a chat. He mentions that the master is interested in unconfirmed gates and asks her to explain everything that happened there. After she recounts the events, he remarks that it's surprising someone like her fainted in such a dungeon. She admits things got complicated, but in the end, she saw everything before passing out. Taehun had activated his full berserker mode and was using a sword she had never seen before. The man bangs the table, realizing that hunting an S-rank individual is always worth it. Yurin agrees that Taehun was impressive but warns him to pay more attention to the support. Everyone thought the boy was a D rank. But he created a sword that utilized all of Taehun's power. The purple-haired man laughs, saying if he did something like that, it would indeed be good to have him around. However, he believes someone who only creates tools is only useful if a strong person can use them. He only cares about combat power, considering anything beyond that to be an impurity. Yurin tells him that this impurity will be the reason Taehun defeats him. The man says since the witch is in love with that support, he will pay more attention. He promises that soon he will kill both the support and Taehun. The scene shifts to a few days later. Junseo wakes up in bed, exhausted and tired. After that fight, he has been sleeping for several days but never feels rested. He thinks it might be because of Elizabeth's skill and wonders if there is a way to deactivate it. Not seeing her, he looks around, wondering where she went. He notices the window is open and assumes she left. However, he thinks it's fine since he can use her power to bring her back whenever he wants. Elizabeth is walking around the streets, scaring everyone. Meanwhile, Junseo is focused on the treasure chest he received. He never imagined seeing one of these in real life, something players receive occasionally in the game. You receive a reward that is somewhat random. However, this treasure of significance only gives what the person opening it needs. The problem is that, for example, it might give a weapon that can only attack but not defend, or a shield that reflects any attack but ends up hitting friends. The most peculiar part is that every item is always useful despite these problems. Junseo knows that what he needs most at this moment is something that increases mana recovery. As he opens it, he knows exactly what will come out. So, he opens the treasure of significance, wondering what the item's flaw will be. The system announces that the correct item is being selected for Junseo Shin. A light radiates in the room and a moment later, a ring appears in his hand. It is the trader's gluttony, which allows him to steal mana from people. What confuses Junseo the most is that the amount of mana increases the closer he is to the person he is stealing from. Frustrated, he throws it against the wall, cursing that it is not fair while Elizabeth returns home. He realizes that while this is very useful, it will also be extremely difficult since he will end up draining his own friends. Elizabeth, seeing him stressed, asks why he is so worked up. She then mentions that the fool from before is coming to visit. Junseo goes to the balcony to take a look. Sure enough, there's a limousine park outside and we know who it is. I thought it was Tan-hun, but it was Kim, saying he can't believe that support lives in such a place. Junseo remarks that the guy who arrived is an idiot. Kim looks up, thinking it was foolish to come here, but that guy is worth the trip. When he was frozen, unable to react, he saw the boy handing a sword to Tan-hun. Even trapped in his own barrier, he could feel its power piercing through the protection. He has no idea how a D-rank support managed to create something like that, but he's excited, thinking if that damn Tae-hun couldn't recruit him, he will. Junseo appears and asks why Kim is there since he didn't give out his address. Kim says that usually people are excited because it shows that the guilds appreciate them. He extends his hand, saying that if Junseo came down, he must know why he's there. Junseo brushes past him, saying he's more interested in renewing his assistant license for dungeons. At this, Kim says he'll pay triple, 3 times anything Ta-hun is paying. He admits he doesn't have a good personality but always buys the talents he wants at a worthwhile price. Junseo turns and says that at least Kim knows what people think of him, but warns that his answer won't change. He leaves, saying he also told Ta-hun that there's nothing they can offer him. Kim, furious, mutters that Junseo is just like that damn Yeren Khan. He recalls her saying that people in that guild fought too highly of themselves to want to recruit her. Clenching his fists, "You guys, they'll see about this business of him having nothing to offer." Sooner or later, those 2 players will beg to join his guild. On the way, Junseo wonders why he can only reach the association on foot when someone suddenly bumps into him in the street. He turns and apologizes, but the person says nothing, just nods. Junseo finds it strange that he didn't notice anyone getting so close to him. Then he realizes something. He seems to know who this person was that bumped into him. Looking back, no one is there. He wonders why Doyen is still alive. This is the leader of his first group who now just recognized him too. A hooded man stands nearby while other talks about the dangers of any dungeon above rank C. Junseo is beside a girl who says she's nervous because she's never been in such a difficult dungeon. He reassures her, saying that the leader seems experienced, so as long as they follow his instructions, there's nothing to worry about. Meanwhile, the hooded man watches them head toward the gate, seemingly targeting the protagonist. He knows he's a D-rank support hunter who has been hunting for less than 2 years. His entire career started with the Wong Guild, which was also the guild of his older brother, Doyen. He remembers asking his brother why he went to a D-rank dungeon when he could go to a much stronger one. Dwayne explained that there were still plenty of resources there and the more difficult ones were too expensive to buy into. His brother commented on how unfair it was that the large guilds monopolized all the gates. Dwayne said it was fine because if they could mine half of what was in that D-rank dungeon, they would be in profit. He explained that his team had been training and fighting hard. So, they wouldn't have to borrow anything from any other guild. He said the world was about to know the power of the Wong Guild, but that never happened. Junseo received a call from the association with the news. He complained saying it didn't make sense for a B-rank adventurer to die in a D-rank dungeon. The attendant explained that it happened because the dungeon was misclassified and they were still investigating. That was when Junseo felt that an accident wasn't the cause of his brother's death. He knew his brother had won the right to enter that gate through the official association auction. The question remained whether it was possible to falsify a gate auction. He knew there was something more that no one else knew. The attendant told him that the body would be released in 2 days and that they were lucky to have at least found it. This was only possible because one person survived and brought the bodies out. Junseo thought this D-rank adventurer had been too lucky. Back in the dungeon, everyone prepared to enter the gate. The excited leader told everyone to be careful not to get hurt. Junseo's brother continued to question how a bunch of B-rank adventurers could die and a G-rank survive. He would keep investigating until he found all the answers. At that moment, the security guards outside seemed confused. They told someone to stop, saying only authorized participants were allowed to enter. The person said he was indeed invited and presented his permission record, laughing and saying it didn't make sense for someone to walk to a gate fully equipped if they weren't going to enter. The guard said everything seemed in order and he smiled while thinking that if the guard hadn't accepted it, he would add to kill him. The target's name this time is Dojin Mu and he wants to see what this would-be hero can do. The scene shifts to inside the dungeon. Several skeletons lay on the ground as the team continued advancing, taking down another creature. The leader seemed excited, saying they managed to defeat the monster. Dojin remarked that this couldn't be a C-rank dungeon. It was at least B rank and wouldn't have complicated things if they had still been hiding. The leader thanked him, saying that without the boy, things wouldn't have gotten complicated. However, Dojin said he had only done half the job, seeing everyone fallen behind him. He looked down and stared at the blades he was holding. A little earlier, the Nong had been standing and the leader was already down. He had started fighting but had no chance of winning. Then someone asked if he wanted new weapons. It was Junseo, who said he could build some, but Dojin would have to forget about his abilities. Dojin realized these daggers were far superior to the ones he usually used. But how could a D-rank guy create such weapons out of nowhere? He called out to Junseo and asked exactly who he was. Junseo replied that he was curious to know the same thing. Dojin said okay and asked if he remembered the name Doyen, telling Junseo that he was his older brother and that Junseo had been part of the guild. He wanted to know what happened to his brother and what Junseo's involvement was. But then a red energy enters the room. Dojin is startled because that wasn't part of his power. The attack hits his chest, pushing him back. He looks confused, wondering if they left any monsters alive. At that moment, the man from before appears, saying this is very unexpected. He's not surprised that Dojin, a future hero, blocked his attack. What surprises him is that someone else survived too. Junseo is just observing. Dojin has no idea where this guy came from, but he is extremely strong. The man tells him to relax and not be so scared. Junseo lowers his shield and the man recognizes him, calling him an impurity and saying he's the D-rank support. This confuses Junseo. The man says it's a pity because defeating him without Taehun won't be as fun. Dojin is puzzled as to why Junseo would know Taehun. But the man raises his blade saying they will have to have some fun to discover if he is special in any way. He then charges at Dojin. Dojin manages to defend himself but is thrown back, realizing the man is much stronger. He knows that if he keeps only defending, he will end up dying without doing anything. The man sends a slash of red energy and Dojin dodges, charging forward. The enemy starts smiling, saying the other isn't doing anything. Seeing Junseo standing still, he says it doesn't even feel like a 2-on-1 fight. Junseo agrees, saying he's right about that. At that moment, the enemy feels something strange. His entire hand is wrapped in threads of demonic energy. He can hardly move his sword. In the background, Elizabeth is standing there, obviously casting a spell. The two of them announce that it's actually a 3-on-1 fight. The problem is that Junseo is now out of demonic energy and Elizabeth Bathory's summoning will end in 10 seconds. Junseo managed to summon her for a short moment, but the damage was so great that he was nearly killed. However, that brief moment was enough to end the fight. The man tries to slash at Elizabeth, but she activates her vaporization ability, saying it's a pity, but she's not afraid of physical attacks. She mentions that he looks like someone she knows, but much weaker. Nonetheless, it doesn't matter because he already made the wrong move. Dozier approaches from behind. Desperate, the man turns to slash at Dojin, but he misses and Dojin is already underneath. The blade pierces through and the familiar Elizabeth is unsummoned, leaving saying it was no big deal. The man is now missing a piece of himself. Dojin wanted to finish him off, but unfortunately, the man managed to sacrifice a part to avoid death. He tells the man to surrender and drop his weapon, which only angers him further. He drops the weapon, a clear sign of surrender. But Dojin realizes he has another plan. The man stands still for a moment and pulls a purple stone from his body. Dojin notices that it contains demonic energy. The man breaks the crystal and Dojin lunges at him, saying he must have a plan. The attack hits squarely, creating a circle of energy. But then Dojin realizes it's a teleportation circle. Junseo is thankful the man escaped, because otherwise, both of them would be in a terrible state and he couldn't help anymore. When Dojin gets up to ask something, Junseo says it's okay. He'll explain everything. Sometime later, they are outside the dungeon. Some of the other adventurers who were farther back were killed by that man. Dojin says he doesn't think it's right that they have to lie and say the adventurers were killed by monsters. Junseo says that until they figure everything out, it's better to continue this way. If the man had permission to enter, it means he used a fake pass. Dojin asks how that's possible. The protagonist replies that he has no idea, but it seems they are fabricating things related to the association. The worst part is that it could be a genuine document. After all, the same thing happened 3 years ago. It seems that somehow people are able to fabricate any document from the organization, and the culprit is someone so influential that they're easily deceiving everyone. That's why, for now, it's better to lie to everyone. Dojin understands that this is the best option for the time being, but asks how Junseo can be a G rank hunter when his skills are so good. Junseo reveals that a year ago, he was worse than a D rank and even his basic dagger wasn't decent. But it was during that dungeon incident that he awakened some abilities, which allowed him to survive alone that time. He knows it's all very suspicious and he wouldn't believe it either if someone told him this. However, his goal is to tell the whole truth once he discovers who is behind the incident. He apologizes to Dojin, saying he'll do everything possible to find out who is responsible for Doin's death. Dojin stays silent for a second and then asks who told him to do such a thing. He is not the only one involved in this case, so he will also search for the culprit. After all, the two of them are not different from each other. He has seen firsthand what these people are capable of and also wants to uncover the truth. Therefore, he won't stop until he finds the criminal behind all this. He tells Junseo he hopes they get along well and that from now on, they'll have to rely on each other. The scene shifts to an abandoned warehouse. A teleportation circle appears in the middle and the one-armed man from before emerges. He falls to the ground, remembering those bastards and swearing he'll kill them. A girl tells him he's very confident for someone who appeared after being beaten. She laughs in his face, saying it would have been better if he had returned dead because at least that way he could have served as his sacrifice. He starts to complain, but she tells him to be quiet because she's going to help him since the master has certain expectations for him. She sends an item floating towards him. The thing looks like a mask full of mouths and eyes and he asks what the hell it is. She tells him not to think too much and just swallow it because it will become his new arm. He refuses, saying there's no way he's swallowing that abomination she created. She laughs, saying it seems they don't trust each other. But reminds him that a swordsman without an arm is useless. He stares at the creature and a girl tells him that with it, he'll get everything you've been asking for. He eats the creature and obviously feels something strange. She remarks that the two seem to be getting along well. The arm appears and she says that this is just the initial form, telling him to let her know if he doesn't like it. He grits his teeth, saying that in the end, he'll kill everyone. The bastard who cut off his arm and of course, that damn Junseo Shin. The scene changes to an airport. There are a lot of security guards blocking the entrance. People are wondering if some kind of celebrity is arriving with all this security. Soma comments about the Kaimu Guild and a girl says she has heard of them. He explains that this group is returning from Europe after dealing with a very difficult gate. Then, a red-haired girl says that she has finally arrived. A blonde appears and everyone starts asking about the dungeon she participated in. Her name is Hin and she's the owner of a guild. The red-haired girl approaches and asks everyone to give her some rest. In the car, someone welcomes her back and starts giving her a lot of information about some meetings she has to attend. However, the information that catches her attention is the fact that the executor was seen 2 days ago. She asks where and the girl responds that it was in a dungeon that was misclassified. Some people in the area recognize him by his appearance and only 2 people survived the incident. She sees that one is an assassin and the other is a D rank support. She asks how that is possible and the secretary says she has no idea. The only thing they know is that both said the rest of the group was killed by monsters. Hyam wonders if they are working with the executor, or threatened by him. She says to put those 2 on her list, because she needs to talk to both of them. Back at home, the protagonist sighs, saying he's not finding anything. That guy from before is not registered as a hunter, or is using some kind of disguise. Junseo begins to suspect that this guy is involved with all these misclassified dungeons. Elizabeth's mansion was a prime example of a place where 7 extremely talented heroes could have died. Even if they all had the potential to become heroes, their futures would have ended there. They are not only meddling with organizations, but also sending assassins. Junseo starts to wonder who the next target might be. He then receives an unknown call. As soon as he answers, someone asks if it's Junseo and he trembles. The scene changes to another bar. Yurin is sitting at a counter and someone greets her. She says she expected him to wear something appropriate for the occasion. Junseo responds that he doesn't care about fancy places, so it's irrelevant to him what he wears. What he wants to know is how she got his number and address since it's not registered with the association. She doesn't know the address and concludes that it must have been Kim who went to see him. She imagines him with a confident smile inviting Junseo to join the guild. But Yurin activates her seductive skill, saying she's interested in something more personal. She tells him to sit down and have a drink. But Junseo stays firm, saying she should say what she wants quickly, or he'll leave. She says she wants to ask about the dungeon since she fainted while they were there. She knows Tae-hun is strong, but it's impossible he defeated that monster alone. Junseo tells her to ask Tae-hun because he's just a D rank support. He says all he did was create a sword with the remaining energy. Yurin smiles, saying she understands and asks about the information he mentioned wanting to share. He explains the situation and she questions what he means by saying she might be the next target of someone hunting hunters. He says that misclassified dungeons are a sign that someone there was a target, and since she is the only person without a guild, he suspects it's her. She admits he has a point, but reminds him of a certain detail. After all, she wasn't the only one in that situation. She gets closer, pointing out that there was also a D-rank support without a guild. She mourns that if what he says is true, he is the one in danger. She seductively offers him protection if he asks for it. But Junseo isn't interested in her games and says he's leaving.